But the one wide receiver that you're looking for coming out of the draft that you wish we could get, obviously it's Marvin Harrison Jr., but realistically for the Panthers, who's somebody that you're kind of looking at? Obviously, we talked about some running backs, but who's your number one wide receiver that you'd want us to?
Realistically, if we're talking the 33rd pick, I like Troy Franklin a lot.
Okay.
But
hey, I thought it was all over.
Welcome, man. This is Roll Coverage. Obviously, you know me. My name is Nick. We're going to hop into it. I have Zach here, one of the diehard Panthers fans, a dude that has dragged me, shown me exactly what I've been missing with Carolina. I'm going to pass it over to him. Zach, welcome.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks for having me. First off, I don't really see myself as somebody who's worthy of having a spot on anyone's podcast. I just like to talk about sports, and if people vibe with it, they vibe with it. But that's just kind of what I'm about. I really do appreciate the opportunity, though.
Of course, man. Of course. And of course, man, if you want, like being on here, bring you back and everything like that. I always thought of Roll Coverage as like my little mantra, which is sports for sports sake, man. It's just for the fun of it. I even did a video the other day on cricket. Never watched cricket in my life, but it's interesting. It's, just sports. But yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got, started in life. I know you're a previous U.S. veteran, so thank you for your service and everything like that. But yeah.
I mean, I'd probably say I'm from Maryland originally. I was born in Washington, D.C., raised up in Hyattsville, Maryland for a little bit. Family full of Redskins, Commanders fans. They tried to get me into that team, but I really didn't get down into football until we moved to North Carolina when I was 6. A couple years after that was really when I started paying attention to sports. And Carolina Panthers, they were always on Sunday, so I just got a natural affinity for the team. I'd probably say the 2005 season, that 11-5 year where we lost to the Seahawks in the playoffs, that was probably the first year that I was like really kind of paying attention to it. And then ever since then, I've just been crazy about the team. As you can see, I've got the Panthers hat on.
Definitely
representing.
Repping. Hell yeah,
Oh
man.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Represent 2-15 or 15-2. I'm gonna have this hat on.
Man, that 2-15 this year was a little bit crazy, but that's awesome, man. My wife's actually from Maryland. We lived up there during COVID. It's a beautiful area. I was in the western part in Westminster, Maryland, but Hyattsville is obviously gorgeous. I got a few buddies that live over in Annapolis and all over. Maryland is absolutely stunning, but North Carolina, man, you get Panthers football in North Carolina, so
yeah, can't beat it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But I mean, obviously, we got our ass kicked a lot. So we'll start off with, just like you said, 2-15. Man, what was your thoughts on first of all, what was your thoughts going into the season? We were obviously acquiring Bryce, giving away a haul to Chicago, losing DJ Moore, Brian Burns and all that other stuff. Where did you really see us going first? And then obviously where we ended up, what do you think we obviously messed up besides head coach, GM, and a few other things?
Well, honestly, coming out of the 2022 season, going into the 2023 season, I was optimistic for our future, but I also understood that, what we did with Steve Wilks on the back half of that year was kind of lightning in a bottle in a sense. I was one of the few people that kind of was like, whoa, okay, I know we got Frank Reich now, and he's supposed to be, a really good NFL head coach, which I still think he is a good coach, but we'll tap into that a little bit later.
Yeah, we'll get there. Trust me, I got strong feelings about that.
Oh yeah. But I was like one of the few people that was like, let's not say 10, 11 wins yet. This is a team that still has some issues, beyond just plugging a quarterback in, no matter what, Scott Fitterer said. But I didn't think it was going to be 2-15 bad. I was thinking, we'd be right back in that 7-win window, year one. But yeah, there's just a lot that went wrong. I think it all starts with how we dismantled the offense that was in place. Like really, I think it was the stat I saw was like 33% of our offense from 2022 was gone going into 2023, which a lot of that was DJ Moore and Deontay Foreman.
And then, of course, losing Christian McCaffrey the year before mid-season, that's a huge piece gone.
Yeah, definitely. Losing McCaffrey was that one stung, but I felt like it had to happen if we were going to not get the quarterback organically, which meant not tanking.
Of
So
course.
we had to do something. We went too long without going all in on the quarterback position, and I think it was the right move to trade up in the draft if we were going to finish at ninth. But eesh, I mean, I kind of wish it would have played out differently. We didn't really give the guy anything to work with this year,
Nothing.
so
Truly nothing. Yeah. And that was my big thing going into the year is like preseason, everyone was like, I saw some people, a dude that I actually think is hilarious. He used to be autistic Panthers fan on Twitter. Dude's hilarious. But he was like, oh yeah, man, we're gonna win 10 games, 11 games. I'm like, I don't know what you're smoking, man, but that's not it. If you're trusting 33-year-old Adam Thielen and DJ Chark and LaVisca Chenault, man, you're down bad. Like even now, this whole narrative that we're going through, and we'll get to that part too, but just very briefly, is Ayuk. All of a sudden people want Brandon Ayuk. I'm like, dude, last year you guys could have gotten Brandon Ayuk for basically nothing. Like he was, he's a good wide receiver. Is he the 33rd pick worth? I don't know about that, but I mean, there's that whole thing. So we didn't even have the right evaluation of talent going into the year. Obviously, Fitterer and all that other stuff. So yeah, I feel you on that. And then losing DJ Moore, losing CMC, losing Hassan Reddick before then, like all of those things affected. Imagine Hassan Reddick on this defense now, like we would have actually been contending for a lot more games. So I feel you on that. And I feel you on the fact that Bryce being put in this situation is not just a plug and play. It would, if he went to the 49ers, that's a plug and play. Bryce Young would be a Super Bowl champion right now.
oh
But
yeah,
the idea that you're just going to come into Carolina, a franchise that even with Cam Newton and Ron Rivera, we're like, hey, man, we made it to the Super Bowl, and then the next year we're going to miss the playoffs. And the next one, we're going to go to the playoffs, and the next one, we're going to suck again. So it's like this weird thing of that we haven't been able to get out of our own way almost. And just so many problems. You're right, from coaching to just the philosophy in general. Losing 33% of our offense, I didn't even notice that.
hmm
But obviously, you see the pieces, you see the offensive line fall to pieces. So yeah, it's just been crazy.
yeah, definitely. I would say, and it all started for me, back in 2020. You remember this season where we had Teddy Bridgewater and we had the four guys go over 1,000 scrimmage yards. We had, DJ, Curtis Samuel, Robbie, and then Mike Davis, who just announced his retirement today.
Yep, shout out
They
Mike.
all went for over 1,000 scrimmage yards in 2020, and going into 2023, none of those guys were there. And then you had McCaffrey still, who was hurt that year, but he was still in the mix in 2020 when he was healthy. He had a few good games, namely that Kansas City game where we almost went to Arrowhead and beat them with
Would that have
Teddy
been
Bridgewater as our
beautiful?
quarterback.
Oh, that would
I
have been a
know,
Matt. Oh, I would have. Yeah, that would have been amazing, amazing. But
but
yeah, Teddy B
it's just
was such an interesting one. If Teddy B couldn't be ultra successful, I don't know how we thought maybe Bryce could come in there and do it. Not saying that Bryce and Teddy B are equal, but man, Teddy B had some pieces around him, and we gave Bryce nothing.
yeah, it was. So I think that year really our defense being so young hurt us because that year we ended up having the all defensive draft where we
Mhm.
plugged in a lot of first and second year guys as starting defense as starting defenders. Um, and I think that was really hurt us because the offense, even though they finished kind of like middle of the pack, I mean, you have four guys go over 1,000 scrimmage yards. I can't really call that a bad offense
Yeah,
necessarily.
that was a great
Um,
offense. Great offense.
but I mean, it was just one of those things where it's like, okay, that if that was the year that we wanted to plug and play a quarterback, coming off of that year should have been the year that we plugged in a quarterback
I agree.
because we had the running back, we had at the very least, even if we still let Curtis Samuel walk, we still had two wide receivers that went for 1,000 yards the season prior, in DJ Moore and Robbie Chosen. I think that's what he's going by now. But
Yeah, yeah, something like that.
yeah, we had wide receivers, we had a running back that was amazing, still is amazing.
Yeah.
Ah, I don't think this was the year to say plug and play. I'm happy we got the quarterback. Obviously, I'm
hmm
happy we got Bryce. I think his future can still be a very good future, but we didn't do him any favors.
I agree with that 1,000%, man. To be honest, like Bryce is in such a weird position. And obviously we can
Mhm.
move on a little bit to just him. Coming out of the draft, he was the prohibitive number one quarterback. He
Yeah.
was the one that so many people were like, man, he's going to be the fixer of your franchise. It doesn't matter what. We make that big blockbuster trade, which obviously Fitterer and Tepper had their hands in a little bit, because I feel like we could have gotten away with not trading more, maybe doing something else with that, because I think
Mhm.
obviously Bryce Young with DJ Moore would be electric. Like he would be a great 1,000+ yard receiver every year with Bryce.
Mhm.
But we decided to give that up. We decided to think, oh, hey, we're a quarterback away. And then, of course, we bring in the 200-year coaching staff of Frank Reich and all that other stuff. And listen, I'm a Frank guy. And I'm not saying that like I'm a stan or anything like that. I just thought he was a good coach. He had some good years with Indy. Obviously, he won a Super Bowl as the OC, non-play calling OC at that in Philly. So I thought it could be an opportunity. But my first thing was there's no point in bringing all these guys in like Thomas Brown and all these people if we're not going to retain them more than a year. So as we saw with Tepper firing, the soccer coaches in back-to-back years, he fired Rule, fired Reich. It gives me a lot of pause about, was Bryce really set up? And not just that, but like if it's true, and most of or all signs are pointing to it being true, that Tepper maybe it was involved in that pick a little bit more than he should have been. If that's the case, then now the hiring of McCandless, the hiring of Idzik, and all those other ones are to help cultivate Bryce into either being an all-pro or they're going to pivot real quick. I'm not going to say the end of next year. Like if this next year he doesn't break 3,000 yards again, we might be having a conversation here. But I expect him to break 3,000 yards. I expect him to break 20+ touchdowns. I expect him to make a colossal leap forwards from what it was last year. But that's just going to come in not firing everybody. And not just that, but not having Tabor and Campen in there that were essentially like Tepper's moles. So Bryce, in this first year, got the shit end of the stick. I'm sorry.
Yeah, definitely. And to get back on the trade, that trade, the whole logic behind the trade just kind of infuriated me and everything that ensued afterwards. I mean,
Yes,
because the report said that, okay, Chicago would have taken DJ Moore, Brian Burns, or Derek Brown. Ideally, you don't want to give up any of those three guys. But when
okay.
you look at how things played out, like, why would we trade the guy who we just extended in DJ Moore? We just extended him at a very, very team friendly deal based on where the market was going and
Absolutely.
is still going for wide receivers. We got him at a bargain. Why would we trade him away? His contract's already on the books when you don't even want to extend Brian Burns. It just didn't make
Yes.
any sense to me. Like,
Yes.
okay, if you're gonna play hardball with Brian Burns' contract, which I mean, I'm not saying that we did or did, but it seems like we did from the outside looking in. It looked like we were, playing a little bit of hardball with him. If you're gonna do that, why not just trade him?
I couldn't agree more. It makes no sense to
Like,
me. And not just that, but now we're in 2024 going into the next season and he's still not extended. And now they're talking about franchising him and then trading him. You should have gotten
yeah.
him under like a Von Miller style contract. And I keep going back to that. Well, 20 to 25 million a year, give him a 6-7 year deal. He's 25. So it would
Mm-hmm.
expire when he's 32 and then get him 2 or 3 years into it. And if he's not panning out, he's a 27, 28-year-old pass rusher on a team friendly deal. He would be able to go like that. So I
Yeah.
don't understand that. And same thing with Derek Brown. He's going to have to get paid. Luvu's going to have to get paid now and all that. And I just don't see where we're getting the money, especially if we're going to go out there and get a big free agent wide receiver, which in my opinion, I don't think we're going to be able to nail. A lot of people are leaning towards Evans. I just don't see it, especially since he might be requesting 30 million. That's a huge part of the cap.
Yeah, I agree. I'm thinking as far as like free agency goes, like I guess like we said offline, there's a lot of work to be done here, and there's a lot of work to be done just to bring back the same team that we went 2-15 with, let alone adding on to it. I think there's going to need to be a lot of restructures,
Yep.
maybe a few cuts that we
Mm-hmm.
may not want to do. Dante Jackson he's been a very playable cornerback too. But when you look at his cap hit, like in the savings we could have if we post June 1 him,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Like
Well, there's
we
a
can
lot of
kind of get a
those. The offensive line has a few of those on there where if we get rid of him after a certain point, it's like, hey, man, yeah, he's a lineman and everything like that, but I'll just go pay somebody else. Like, sucks to suck.
Exactly.
I don't know, kind of thing, especially with like people like Icky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think, wide receivers, we might have to settle for, I hate using the word settle, but we might have to, settle for a couple guys like, a Gabe Davis and a Hollywood Brown,
I'd be okay with
versus,
Hollywood Brown, though, because we're going to lose Thielen most likely. He's most likely
yeah.
gone. So you're going to have to put somebody there. I don't see the point in extending Chark, but if he's willing to come back again on a team-friendly deal, $5 to $7 million, that's fine. Chark, Laviska, I would say go. Get the hell out of here. We don't need you. We don't need a Debo style like he was brought in to be. I'd be totally fine with Hollywood. I'd be totally fine with Hollywood. Bring back, Chosen One. Like something.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then, of course, draft a wide receiver.
Yeah, I definitely think we got a double dip, as far as playmakers go. Whether that's a wide receiver and a tight end, 2 wide receivers, a wide receiver and a run. Like we have to get explosive players on offense through the draft. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it, because that was probably the least explosive offense that, I've seen in 10 years.
Ever.
Like,
I mean, it looked like the 1960s football, man. It looked
I
bad.
know. Yeah. So I definitely think we'll have to, quote unquote, settle for, maybe those second tier, a couple of those second tier wide receivers in the free agent pool. Maybe a Tyler Boyd. We could, he might be available.
I like that. Yeah, because the rumors are going to tag Higgins, right?
Yeah, I don't think Higgins hits the market.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't think he hits the market. I've kind of got him out of my mind like 2 months ago.
Same here. I would love him. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I do think there was also, I did a short, a YouTube short on it. If you go look at him before he hit DeMar Hamlin and after he hit DeMar Hamlin, they're 2 separate players. Like beforehand, he had a bunch of games where he's 100, 150 plus yards. Like he was doing like balling out for the Bengals. It might have been a time when Jamar was maybe dealing with something, but he was balling out. As soon as he does that, it's like the immediate 8 games. I think he has 100-yard game and a bunch of them are like 20, 30 yards. So I think that mentally messed with him and took him some time. That would have been the time to go get him. T. Higgins is going to get paid. Same thing with Jamar. Yeah. Like Boyd is a good one. So Hollywood and Boyd would be a perfect. As long as we can keep them at a decent cap hit though.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As long as we don't overpay them, those are 2 guys that I'd be fine with. Because like I said, I don't think we need to go from, being the 31st or 32nd worst, wide receiver room to being a top 10 wide receiver room. We just need to try and get as close to league average as possible this year.
I agree.
Because that complete 180 jump isn't very realistic. Like,
and not just that, but not with our franchise. If we were the Pittsburgh Steelers, okay, we got a shot.
Yeah.
But the Carolina Panthers, no. Well, I'm not giving us that.
Yeah, no, we're too cursed for that.
Yeah,
but
unfortunately. But with that, do you think that we should be addressing? Would you rather us spend? Okay, how about this? I'm going to give you 3 options. 1, we spend a bunch of money on a top tier wide receiver, a DK Metcalf, a Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, whoever it may be. We're going to pay a little bit higher money, so we're going to have to sacrifice on that wide receiver 2 or wide receiver 3. We space it out and just get 2 good ones, Tyler Boyd, Hollywood Brown, somebody in that thing. Or do we package up Miles Sanders and try and get him out of there and maybe try and get somebody else to fill in that running back role that might be able to help us out there as well, where we might be able to just get that. I think he's 5-year, $25 million for Sanders off the books, because it seems like the fan base hates his guts. So I'm going to give you those 3 options. What would you do if you were the Carolina Panthers GM right now?
If I was the Panthers GM right now, and this isn't going to be very popular, but I would take the second option of getting the 2, I would do the 2 guys like, a Hollywood and Tyler Boyd, simply because there's just so much more that I would like us to do in the free agent class than just spend on a top tier wide receiver.
I agree.
I really think the offensive line is a concern. It is a big concern because it really seems like, I think in my pinned tweet, I have that as like threat level midnight. as far as like our concerns go. Like it's like, and it's not just the starters, because I think when everybody's healthy, I think under the right scheme, it can be a passable unit. But if you got five guys that can only play as a solid unit under a specific type of scheme, then you don't have a good offensive line.
I agree.
So I think we need guys that, first off, we need to figure out, okay, can the guys that we have in the room right now do what Canales wants to do? I think what they did with Baker last year, they tried to get the ball out as soon as possible. I think he had like his career lowest in, time in the pocket from him throwing the ball.
Mhm.
It was like really low for what it normally is for him. But the problem is a lot of our wide receivers weren't open, in that, time for. So, all right,
Never
so we got to
open.
look at that. Like the offensive line, could they do that? Yeah, okay. Like I think they could, but the thing is, like, can our wide receivers get open so Bryce can get them the ball? Because if we can't, then it defeats the purpose of, having that philosophy. Okay, we're going to get the ball out of his hands as soon as possible. Well, that doesn't work when your wide receivers are still covered or still getting out of their breaks because they're not explosive.
Well,
So
not just that,
I
but plus
think,
our run game was so dependent on Chuba Hubbard that it was
mhm,
like if Chuba's not on the field, oh, it's Miles Sanders. Oh, okay, yeah, just go get him. Go get the quarterback and just man coverage. There was so many
yeah,
times where we saw the corners literally draped on the wide receiver, and you're just like, yeah, of course, there's no place for Bryce to throw the ball.
yeah. Yeah, Miles Sanders is going to be an interesting one for what we do with him. And I like that you did present that third option of, because like if we could ship off Miles Sanders, like, I do it like in a heartbeat. Now, I think there were things, I think he rushed back from that groin injury a little bit too fast and never really got his footing this season.
I
But
agree.
I mean, even still, like how much can you really blame that,
I
at
think
the
I
end of the
think
day?
to be honest, it was the big thing. Like he went from rushing behind arguably one of the best, if not the best, offensive lines to arguably the worst. So of course Miles Sanders can't do anything. Even if we were to bring in somebody, and this is somebody that I floated out the other day because I was bored,
Mhm.
was Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb's coming off an injury. He's I think this is his last year on his contract, so he's going to be looking for something moving forwards. He's one of the best, like I think last year he only played 4 games and led the league in 20+ yard runs.
Yeah.
So Nick Chubb is amazing. I'd love to bring him in there. Give them Miles Sanders, maybe a swap a future sixth or fifth, whatever you need to do to get him over there. I would be fine with that because then, yeah, I'll give him $12 million a year. It's Nick frickin' Chubb. I'm sorry, he's better than Chuba. He's better than Miles Sanders as of right now. Obviously, I'm basing it off of pre-injury.
Yeah.
But now would be the best time. His stock is as low as it's ever going to get until he hits the age of 30. So I feel
Yeah.
you on that. I'd much rather diversify 2 good wide receivers, trade for a good, maybe not the best. Obviously, we got Derrick Henry out there too, looking for a team, but he ain't coming to Carolina. So, um, if the only person that might be able to help with that is our new, I think it's assistant special teams coordinator Darren Bates. Hey man, if you want to make a phone call and bring Derrick Henry to Carolina, I'm down with it. But I doubt that's going to
Yeah.
happen. I don't think that's possible. So yeah, it's one of those things. I want us to build the line first. You're right. But we really need to give Bryce the option of a play action and a good run game. If we don't do that, which is what Canales did for Baker, I mean, Rashad White was amazing. So we need to get somebody else in there because if it's Miles Sanders and Chuba Hubbard, we're going to have a tough time.
I agree. Definitely. And I'm higher on Chuba than a lot of people were going into the season. I thought he is he's improved every year he's been in the league. And I thought he got a
I
bad
agree.
rap having to step in for McCaffrey his rookie year. And, obviously, you're stepping in for McCaffrey. What do you expect the guy to do? But
Exactly. Yeah.
um, I'm more on the side of scouting a running back in the draft and filling that need there. I think
Okay.
especially if we do go the 2 wide receiver route, maybe we don't have to double dip at wide receiver specifically. I'd still like to add another one through the draft just because I'm greedy like that.
I agree.
But maybe if we get 2 wide receivers in free agency, we maybe only get 1 wide receiver in the draft and then look at those running backs. Because I mean, there's a few guys in the draft that are kind of intriguing. You
Yeah.
got my personal favorite is Braylon Allen from Wisconsin. I mean, you mentioned Derrick Henry. That guy, probably closest thing to Derrick Henry we'll see, in like the next 5 years, 10 years, maybe. 6'2",
Big praise,
240.
man. Big praise. I'm excited. I hope you're right, man.
I'm not saying he is going to be Derrick Henry, but as far as like physical makeup goes,
Of course.
6'2", 240, 4.4 speed, came out of Wisconsin. So, they have a decent track record of running backs. So, I mean, I definitely think he would fit real nice here.
I agree.
Obviously, you got
Blake Corum.
Estime. Yeah, Blake Corum, Estime, even Donovan Edwards from Michigan. I like him. He's very explosive. If you're looking for a guy that could, create those big plays that we need in the run game, that could be a guy that potentially could do that. But I definitely think, adding to the running back room would be smart. And, as much as it sucks, I like Raheem Blackshear, but I just don't see a role for him, especially if we can't offload Miles Sanders. Like if we can offload Miles Sanders, I think Blackshear could be that kind of scat back. But I mean, if we're gonna have Miles Sanders on the books, we might as well try and use him one way or another.
Especially for the cheap price tag. Like we're not gonna be able to get another running back 5 years, 25 million or whatever the hell it is. Like that's not going to be a thing anymore, even though they've been devalued. But the one wide receiver that you're looking for coming out of the draft that you wish we could get, obviously it's Marvin Harrison Jr., but realistically for the Panthers, who's somebody that you're kind of looking at? Obviously we talked about some running backs, but who's your number one wide receiver that you'd want us to?
Realistically, if we're talking the 33rd pick, I like Troy Franklin a lot.
Okay.
But he's kind of like in that same category as Ladd McConkey is, where like I could see them going tail end of the first round, because there's some teams that could be looking to add to their wide receiver rooms in those late teens to early 20s, or late teens through the rest of the first round, I'll say. So he might not be there, but as far as like realistic options go, I mean, that's the guy. I mean, he's 6'2", 6'3", very fast. He's got that downfield threat. He kind of
Does he remind you of Chark? That's who he reminds me of.
No, I don't really see Chark, honestly. Like my initial comparison for him was probably a taller Deshaun Jackson.
I love Deshaun Jackson. So you're speaking just heavenly words to my ears.
That's kind of what I saw at first, but then I like looked again. I'm like, I think he's got a little bit more polish to him than Jackson did coming out. I think Jackson, at first he was just kind of like that, just straight burner punt return guy, and then he, started, adapting his ability to stack defenders and just get behind anything at any point in time. But I'd off the top of my head, I don't really have the best comparison for Troy Franklin, but I definitely think I don't know if it's DJ Chark though.
Okay. Mine every time I thought of Franklin was Chark. He's got that high end speed. He can get out. He can get outside. He's got some hands, but a lot of his criticism, especially on his like combine profile and everything, obviously before the combine, where people are putting him, a lot of people have put him in that like speedy but needs to improve hands, which is where Chark was. The only reason why I know that is because I did a review basically of where Chark was in the middle of the season, and I compared it to his draft profile, and he didn't improve on pretty much anything since his draft. So it's one of those weird things. But going back to Deshaun Watson really quick, I actually recently heard that he said that he could never run full speed because the field is too short, and that if he got to full speed, he wouldn't be able to stop. So I was like, you're not even running full speed? Jesus Christ. Good God. The miracle to Meadowlands is one of those things that's always going to stick in my mind. As soon as he dropped that ball, I was like, oh no, they're screwed. He picks that thing up, puts his foot in the ground, and he is gone. It is just, I wish we could have somebody like that. But personally, my wide receiver one, of course, obviously is Marvin Harrison Jr., but realistically, it's Brendan Rice. If we can have Jerry Rice's son, if he's literally just half of Jerry Rice, we have a future Hall of Famer. So it'd be great. Plus, we could obviously bring Jerry around. It'd be a great like photo opportunity. It's good for the community, the whole nine. But he's one of the ones that are projected like 89. Like we could get him with a third or a fourth round pick. So I'm hoping that might be able to something we might be able to make happen. But I agree with you. Franklin has been the prohibitive. Who's going to go number 33? If Troy's available, it's going to be Troy. So.
Yeah, I see a lot of Troy Franklin and Xavier Worthy. Those are the two guys that everybody's okay. If all goes right, we get one of those guys. But Brendan Rice is definitely a guy who's interesting because I feel like he got overshadowed at USC by Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams doing Caleb Williams things, but Brendan Rice, he definitely looks good.
Oh yeah.
I would like to see more receiving yards from him, but I mean,
I agree.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
I think he had I think his like last year, not this past season, but the year before that, there was he plays for the Vikings now.
Jay Jettis? Oh, you're talking about Jordan Addison. No. Jordan Addison.
Yeah, Jordan Addison was at USC that first year. So I mean, that was kind of the guy there. And then this year, he like I know he had I know he had at least 10 touchdowns this year, but he only had like 700-800 yards, I think.
Yeah,
they like
Addison
to see more.
Was great though. Oh
yeah, Addison. Yeah, how he slipped to 20 in the 20s is just like I don't know how Minnesota does it. They got Jay Jettas like in that same kind of range in the 20s, and now they get crazy. Jordan Addison, who looks like okay if they ever have to trade Jefferson, which you don't want to do, but if it ever has to come to that, Jordan Addison looks like he's more than capable of being another really good, if not great, wide receiver.
Oh yeah, but now Minnesota's in flux because if Kirk Cousins doesn't come back, then Jay Jettas doesn't want to stay, so they're going to have to franchise tag him, or they're going to try and give him some like, hey, you want $50 million because we're going to have to go draft a quarterback, so we don't really care about cap anymore. So that's going to be a whole weird thing. I of course would love to get Jay Jettas to Carolina, but there's no way on God's green earth that's ever going to happen. But yeah, man, Brendan is going back to Brendan Rice. He is one of those physical, dynamic guys. Obviously coming out of USC, he can catch a pretty ball coming from Caleb Williams, even though I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be the bee's knees like everybody believes. He's still catching a ball from a great quarterback. So I think it could be something to develop. He might take a little bit longer than normal. Of course, there's always the stigma of the, former player's kid not being able to, meet the standard. I think that's more of a thing in basketball than it is in football because we've got, plenty of examples of great kids doing it in football. But yeah, there's a lot of ones, wide receiver, running back, of course, offensive line. This is supposed to be a big year for that as well. One guy projected to go in the top 5, which would be awesome. But yeah, this draft is going to give me a good barometer of what the future of the Carolina Panthers is. Where does Dave Canales want to go? Where does Dan Morgan want to go? When we suit up preseason game 1, where is the team then as opposed to where it is now? Do we really, improve on the positions that we need to? Or are we just trying to give Bryce Young as many weapons as possible to just hope and pray that he's the guy? Obviously, we're just going to take last year and push behind us. But I think that's pretty much what all bets are. Make Bryce look like the guy, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think you got to see what you have in him. Well, you don't want to be in a situation where you don't give him what he needs and then you move on too quickly. He goes somewhere else and he Geno Smiths you. You definitely don't want to, because then we're gonna look like the Carolina Panthers. It's just like, look at those guys, it's like always, but no, you don't want to do that. And you don't want to spend years, even more years, because 2017 was the last time we had a winning team. You don't want to spend too much time trying to say, okay, we got to get the most we can out of Bright. Like if it's not there, it's not there. So we got to find that sweet spot where, okay, we need to know if he's the guy like as soon as possible. But
I agree.
Will it be this year?
I posted something
maybe.
today that Dan Orlovsky said, "Don't even talk to me about Bryce Young until 2025." And I thought that was
Yeah,
really interesting that a lot of people are just like, we don't care. The first 2 years, it's Carolina, terrible ownership, meddling owner, just screw it.
yeah,
Give him 2 years, and then we'll start talking about him. So I think that's where a lot of people's heads are. Like until Bryce can show us, that he can do it in the system with Dave and with what he's given. I think a lot of people are just apprehensive about it because you're right. You don't want to jump out too early, and then all of a sudden he goes to Minnesota and gets Justin Jefferson, and all of a sudden it's 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns, and an MVP. Like you'd be
yeah,
really pissed. So I think it's just what are we going to do? And I think that's where the fan base, especially Panthers Twitter, especially where
yeah,
people are just constantly like at wit's end of just anger and this and that because they just don't know what's going to happen next. Obviously, we want the Dan Morgan quote was fear the logo again. Man, I'm just hoping people just see the logo and don't put us just dead last. Like, don't
yeah.
see the Carolina logo and be like, oh, yeah, they're 32 until otherwise said. Like, I thought, to be honest, Arizona was going to be the worst team. And once they won 2 games, I was like, God damn it. So, I was one of the people in preseason that was like, if we win 5-6 games, I'll be happy. And then as soon as we were done with preseason, I was like, 4 wins, that's max. And then it just kept
Yeah,
coming down. It was like, man, I'm sorry. I'm going to be the bad guy here. And a lot of people are going to
yeah,
hate on me, but we look like shit. Like,
yeah.
and it shows in the box score, it shows in the year end and everything like that. So yeah, we were talking about the draft and everything like that. Obviously, we've got plenty of points of need, offensive line, wide receiver, so much, and we're not even talking about the defense yet. Do you think that there's anybody that you would prefer us to move? Obviously, the big news has been Brian Burns, Dante Jackson, a few of those guys, but who would you move right now? What would be your first move?
Ideally, if I had to pick somebody from the defense that we had to either trade or release, it would definitely be Dante Jackson, simply because that number against the cap is just too large. It's just too much potential space that we could free up just by moving him alone to justify it as a quarterback too.
Yeah. What's his cap hit now? Isn't it like something stupid?
Yeah, it's like 13-ish million in that
Ooh.
ballpark. Like
Yeah, it's getting up there,
if
especially
we
for his production overall.
and like I think like as a strict cornerback too, I like him. I really do. But my hang up is, do we see him? Is he a guy that we could see us giving him another contract? Because contract ends after next season. Like, do we see him being a guy that we give another contract to at the end of next season? If the answer is no, then why do we need to bring him into 2024? Like
Okay.
it just doesn't make too much sense to me, especially when we can save that money against the cap and create more space to make more moves. I think we could get a cornerback too for cheaper. And even if like there are guys like Deshaun Jameson and DiCaprio Bootle that we brought in late into the process this past season, who they look like they might have something there.
I
Why not
agree.
give those guys those reps? We're a young team. We're calling ourselves rebuilding. Let's see what young guys we have on the roster that are ready to step up, because if we can't rely on JC to play all 17 games. What I want from a cornerback too is a guy that can step in and fill that cornerback one role. We've seen time and time again that Dante cannot do that. He is strictly a second guy. That's all. That's what he is. He's been that for the past 5 years. If he's your number one corner, then you're going to have a lot of problems on defense.
I agree. I agree with that 1,000%. I won't not even going to critique it, to be honest. My only caveat to that is I feel the same way about JC Horn. We're at the point
Okay.
now. I mean, we're most likely, or we already did pick up his 5th-year option. So I just don't see him becoming a long-term Carolina Panther. I see him becoming a 5th-round draft pick, and we're going to go get somebody else down the road. I don't see anybody that's going to go give us a good haul for him. Maybe putting the two of them together and trading for a single cornerback would be something. I feel like coming out of that draft, especially, I love JC Horn. I like physical man corners.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually kind of weary about Surtain. Man, was I wrong. Surtain was the pick that year for the corner, and we whiffed big time on that. And you're right. We can't even commit JC to playing 17 games, let alone playing into the playoffs or anything like that. I think it's just his body betraying him. I think it was. I think he could have been a great corner in the league. It's just some people's bodies just physically can't handle it. I'm 5'10", 240, man. I couldn't play in the NFL regardless of how much muscle or effort I put out there. That's just not the way I'm built, especially with how fragile my freaking ankles are, man. But some of these guys are literally can go out there and show you that they can do it at the highest level and then in the worst possible situation, injury. So, yeah, I agree with you. Corner would be the place to go. I'm one of those people that doesn't want Brian Burns to go, but every trade I see is Brian Burns to the 49ers, Brian Burns to the Ravens, Brian Burns to the Bills. And I'm like, guys, when Brian Burns has 16 sacks and wins Defensive Player of the Year, I want everybody to shut their mouths.
Just come to the front of the class. Come on.
Yeah. I want you right here because I'm one of those people. If the minute I see a Brian Burns has been traded from the Carolina Panthers, I'm immediately going to take my fandom and set it to the side for that year. I don't care. My fandom's over. I don't care if it happens week 1 or in the offseason. I'm just punting on the rest of that year. I am a football fan for that year. I'm not even going to support him because I feel like a 25-year-old pass rusher should stay with us. But then, of course, we have Louvu. We have Derek Brown now, who just broke the, all-time tackles?
Yeah, single-season tackles record for a defensive tackle.
Yeah, I mean, that's great, especially with how poor the offense was. So I'm excited to get all these guys re-signed, but man, if we end up wrapping up Louvu, Derek Brown, and Burns, that's more than half of our salary right there, especially with what these guys are getting now. Crazy. Pass rushers getting $30 million.
Oh, definitely. The only way I would be willing to stomach Brian Burns not being in a Carolina Panthers uniform is if it goes through the non-exclusive tag.
Okay.
And I've said that several times, because in my honest opinion, the time to trade Brian Burns was when the Rams offered us 2 first-round picks for him.
Yeah, what was that, 2021? Was it the year after he had his big sack season, or was it the year before?
It was just last year when we were trading McCaffrey.
Yep.
When we traded McCaffrey and we traded Chosen, it was around about that time that the Rams had offered 2 first-round picks for him. And I think if you were going to trade Brian Burns, that was the time to do it because –
But Scott Fitterer was running the game, so there's no way that trade was happening.
Yeah, I don't – I laser eyes. But, so if we do the non-exclusive tag, we still have the chance to get those 2 first-round picks if he negotiates and signs with another team. So I still wouldn't necessarily like it because I do want Brian Burns to be a Carolina Panther. But, if that's the way we go, non-exclusive tag, he hits the market, negotiates with another team. We say, we don't feel comfortable matching that. Give us those 2 picks. Okay. I'll live with that. I won't like it. I won't like it. I'll kick and scream a little bit, say, okay, what are we going to do at defensive end now? Like, who's going to be our edge rusher? But I'll accept it just because at least there will be a vision there. It won't be like us taking, we won't lose necessarily value because those 2 first-round picks will still get them for them. So
I agree with that.
Yeah. Louvu might end up being the odd man out, honestly, because I realistically don't see Derek Brown playing under his 5th-year option like Brian Burns did.
Yeah, I see him sitting out as well and really trying to maximize that money.
Yeah, because right now his value is at its highest. Pro Bowl season, just broke an NFL record. Like, okay, you can talk to me about, he doesn't get enough sacks. He doesn't. It's like, okay, I don't care about none of that.
Yeah,
I really
especially
don't.
not for an inside, lineman. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't care what Chris Jones and Aaron Donald are doing. I don't care. I don't care about any of that. Derek Brown he's just as good as any interior defensive lineman in the league at being an interior defensive lineman.
I agree.
He may not be the pass rusher those guys are, but he's very good at what he does. One of the best in the league. So I think his value is at its highest right now. And I think he knows that. And I think he knows, what happened with Brian Burns, deciding to play on that 5th-year option and his production taking a little bit of a hit.
A massive
maybe
hit, to
his
be
value.
honest. Like
Yeah.
this year was a
So
massive step back, and I'm a huge Burns fan. So
yeah, and I think I just if I were him, like if I were advising him, I'd say, hey man, like don't play it down for these guys until they give you your money. That's just how, like I'm a Panthers fan, but I also like to see guys get what they deserve,
I agree.
get the money that they deserve,
I agree.
set their families up for generations to come, hopefully.
Mhm.
But yeah, don't play it down for these guys until they pay you your money. So
I agree. The NFL has shown that they will do anything they can to not pay you. We just heard about the whole Jimmy Garoppolo thing where he's going to lose out on like $15 million, and then they're going to void his contract and cut him and do whatever the hell they're going to do. So I mean, it's just as simple as that. I mean, you've one big mistake and you're done. Obviously, we've seen guys get charges and everything like that and still not even face it, but yet you'll get guys that are it's crazy. And I can't imagine a Rams defense, Aaron Donald and frickin' Brian Burns, dude. Like that would be. And then at one point they had Von Miller. Imagine that too. It's just like, oh yeah, good luck.
That's crazy, but
it's insane, and it's something that I think is going to be interesting moving forward, especially because I think Cooper Kupp is 30 or 31 now. So I could see a scenario where they're like, hey man, we got Puka. We got Allen Robinson. We got some guys here. We're going to let first and fifth and Cooper Kupp for Brian Burns. It's like, shit, I'll take it. Even if I only get a year or two out of Cooper Kupp, I'll take that. I'll take anything at this point to help my Carolina Panthers, especially if I'm losing such an integral piece as Brian Burns. Because history shows that the Carolina Panthers suck at drafting. That's why I'm hoping, like I said, this is the draft where we finally turn it around and I see us finally pick some good ones. Because even somebody like Jonathan Mingo, for example, going back to the wide receiver core, I thought tough, physical guy, he might be able to finally do it. I think he finished the year with like 800 or something yards, so he finished better than I planned. No?
Not even. He finished with 400 or 500 yards.
Oh, then who the hell? I'm thinking of somebody else then when it comes to the yards. But yeah, okay, so then then that's a fail of a rookie season, especially with what we've seen with some of these guys. Obviously, notwithstanding Jay Jettas, Jamar Chase, and guys like that, but St. Brown came out there and was able to do stuff his rookie year. I mean, there's some guys that have done something, and I feel like if Mingo doesn't turn around, he's going to be one of those guys that's like, man, we got TMJ that we didn't do anything with. We got ISM now. He's just going to be another one of those guys that's like, hey man, sorry, you're a casualty of the Carolina Panthers, and I don't really want that for him.
Yeah, I think with Mingo, I liked Mingo a lot coming out of Ole Miss. Physical makeup, like you said, big physical receiver, fast, strong runner. We saw that at times, like when he has the ball in his hands, like he's
aggressive runner. He's like Isaiah Pacheco almost.
Yeah. So I think what hurt him is he wasn't playing where he should have been playing. And if you look back at those training camp videos that the team released, when they were looking at him in the draft room, they said, that's a big slot. I think that's what he is. But the problem is he couldn't play slot because Adam Thielen was the only receiver that we had that was a consistent winner, and he could only win from the slot. So it was like you pick your poison. So he kind of got bumped out to a position on the field that he shouldn't have been taking the majority of his reps at.
I agree.
In favor of Thielen, which that's another reason why I kind of want to get Thielen on a contender, just because I want Mingo to succeed. I still haven't given up on him, and I think I need to see, is he that big slot that they saw when they drafted him? Can he be that guy? And really, until I get the answer to that, yes or no, definitively, he's still a mystery. Like Terrace Marshall, what happened? I thought he was supposed to. He looked good last year at the end of the season. He was a walking first down towards the end of the season. Like every time he got the ball, his first down. And then he just not on the depth chart like that.
Yeah, that was the one game where Frank was like, yeah, I didn't even know that he was activated or some shit like that. And it was like, oh my God, like he's got the physicality and the actual size of Mike Evans. He's just missing something. And it's probably just reps, to be honest. It's, getting in the game and actually getting out there, because he's just like ISM and a few of the other guys on our roster. they're on the field if somebody's hurt. And if most of the time it's if multiple people are hurt. You're really not seeing field time at that. And you're going up against the practice squad, which no offense, you're a 6'4" wide receiver with like 4.6 or 4.8 speed, whatever the hell it was coming out of college. I mean, that's good enough for the NFL. You're just not getting the opportunity. So yeah, I'd like to see TMJ back into it. I was really hoping, obviously he's an LSU guy. I was really hoping, I'm like, man, we're going to get a Jamar Chase. This is him. Oh my God. It's going to same draft class, same everything. Like, let's go.
Oh yeah.
Nope. We didn't get that. So yeah, that's going to be another one of the ones that I'm hoping we can turn around. Because right now we're looking at, I mean, obviously bottom offensive line. Good. I like Chuba as well. There was actually a point in time where I wish we would have traded for Derrick Henry and done Derrick Henry and Chuba, since Chuba was like a 2,000 plus yard running back in college. I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Pair those two together. We just make these weird decisions, and I'm just hoping this is the final year where I can stop bitching about the Carolina Panthers and finally be like, yes, we're winning. I can finally, go buy a PSL or something like that, and actually care. Because right now it's just like, man, as long as I see David Tepper as the owner, we're screwed.
Yeah, he's definitely got to he's definitely got to show me that he cannot get in his own way. And I think, there are signs that have pointed maybe he's not going to be in his way as much. We'll see. He brought in the hiring firm to handle the search for both the soccer team and for the Panthers.
Yep, Sportsology.
So he seems to have a lot of faith in their process. Yeah, he seems to have a lot of faith in what they do. So I'm hoping that means, we get less of David Tepper, and hearing about his weekly meetings. We'll see. I have my theories on.
Why. I'm pausing right now. Theory time. Go. I need to hear this theory.
So, I mean, my theory is just that I don't think he meddles quite as much as what we say, because in fact, if you rewind back to 2020 and even before 2020, how much did you hear about Tepper?
Not a whole lot, to be honest, but that was also the time when Rule was there and stuff like that. So maybe Rule had a little bit more of a, like kind of keeping his arm away. I don't know.
Maybe,
I'm gonna let you finish.
But I mean, we didn't hear as much about Rule. Or much about Tepper, like, putting any pressure on Rule until, the year that we, fired him eventually, like 5 games into the season. That's the first time we really heard of Tepper, getting into Rule. But those first 2 years, it was like, man, when is the owner going to say something? Like, when is the owner going to do something? We're getting blown out every week, and Matt Rule's, fumbling over his words at the press conference, sounding like he doesn't have the slightest clue on how to fix this. Like, when are we going to do something? It's like it was like almost 180 of what it is now. Like, we're saying, oh, Tepper's always in like he's always meddling. But before it was like, oh, Tepper's not doing anything. Why is he doing anything? So I think the meddling came from, Frank Reich was hired with a certain level of expectation.
I would agree.
I don't think there was the expectation that this was going to be a rebuild under Reich. And like I said before, that might have been misguided or might not have been misguided. Who knows? But I personally think it was a misguided, idea. Yeah. So Reich was hired, to take where Steve Wilkes left off as the interim head coach and build on that. And you go 0-3 in the preseason, and then you start your season off with 2 division losses.
The Falcons, man.
To the Falcons and the Saints. The Saints on Monday night. The team doesn't look very good, very motivated in that Monday night game. And then you keep losing. And that's why I think Tepper, because it was about that week 4, week 5 time where Reich was like, oh, those weekly meetings, they're not fun.
Week 4. Week 4.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, by that point, we were 0-3 in the preseason, 0-4 in the regular season, or 0-7 in the Reich era in total. The team doesn't look very good. Like, of course he's going to meddle. Of course he's going to, get involved. And, that's why I say, the easiest way to get a meddler out of your business is just win. If Dave Canales comes in and he either wins straight away or we look like a football team that's ready to win and ready to compete, I don't think we'll see David Tepper. I really don't. Because even even in that second Matt Rule year where we had Sam Darnold, we started off 3-0 that year. It was like, of course he's not going to meddle. I mean, we started off 3-0. I mean, yeah, we only won 2 games for the rest of the year, but I mean, even still, like, the team had a lot more fight in it under Matt Rule, it seemed, than we did at any point this year. Whether that was under Frank Reich or whether it was under Tabor when he took over, like the team just is like it's like they just kind of said,
Yeah, they kind of just gave up. And that's what I feel like too, man. Like I said at the beginning, I'm a Reich, supporter. I think he's a good guy. All we've heard from everybody is, man, Frank Reich is one of the nicest people you're going to meet. He's always going to have your back, all that other stuff.
Yeah.
And then of course, we add on the lineage, man. He was our first quarterback to throw our first touchdown in our first game. Like, there's a legacy to come with Frank Reich. Not a big one, but a legacy nonetheless. A very small, spotlight. And then 3 or 4 games into the season, actual play games, non-preseason, we hear those comments and all that other stuff. So I feel like it was something that was so much more. And then, of course, we get the Athletic Hunger Games article where they're like, Campen was retained, Tabor was retained, people were backstabbing each other and all this other stuff. And I feel like it was that bad that early. I feel like it was 3 weeks or 3 weeks in where 0-3. I don't think we win another game for like 4 weeks or something like that. So we suck. And then to add on top of that, the idea that it's possible, again, it's going to take years. We're going to wait for a book to come out, and then eventually we'll get the actual, real quotes about what really happened. But if Tepper really did go in there and go, you know what, I really like Bryce Young, we're going to go with this. Like most people have said, that's not what Frank was going to go for. Frank was a Carson Wentz kind of guy, big, strong, fast kind of thing. So Stroud was his dude. We heard it from McCown with the hot mic where he's like, man, we're going to find your court here in Charlotte and the whole nine. And of course, the people that were fired were Deuce Staley, Josh McCown, and Frank Reich. So they're like, yeah, get all the people out of there that most likely wanted Stroud and was probably pretty vocal about that. Now, we can't change the past. Frank should have been able to adapt, but I feel like 3-4 weeks in, he was already like, if you go back and watch that moment where he talks about the meetings, he's like, yeah, man, he's like, I don't really want to be in these meetings. Like, he's super just kind of like, ugh, like this is so dumb. So I think that was the moment too, where he was like, man, I don't really care. I'm just here to protect my job. I don't give a shit about anybody else. And then to have Peter King was talking with Mike Florio, and Peter King confirmed that there was multiple coaches that went with Scott Fitterer behind Frank Reich's back while the season was going on. So I think it just got to the point where Frank just kind of looked at his family at home and he's like, sorry guys, we about to get fired, but we're getting this money and we're just going to get up out of town. So, so as soon as it happened, I think that was when it all just kind of snowballed. It was week 4 where I was like, man, I really don't think we should fire Reich. We should give him the full season, let him finish, fire him in the offseason. The minute our last game is over, fire him. I don't care, but don't mid-season fire him. I thought that would be bad. And of course it turned out terrible. But I'm just hoping next year we can give Canales time. Because if Canales starts out with that same thing, 0-4, 0-5, and then maybe he rattles off 2-3 wins in a row, that's still going to be something where Tepper's going to be like sitting there with a magnifying glass, like, I will burn the shit out of you. I will burn you like an ant, dude. You will be the hell out of here. I don't care about paying people. And obviously we luck into Pete Carroll getting fired. So then we get Brad Idzik. We get Pete Carroll's son as the wide receiver coach now. So we start to get a lot more like Seahawks pieces. In fact, I'm going to make a little logo later that's the Carolina Panther Hawks. Because it's like, man, we're like half Seahawks, half Panthers at this point. So I'm hoping this is finally it. I'm hoping Canales is the hire for the next 5-10 years. It's definitely not going to be 20 or 30 like David Tepper talked about having him eulogize his funeral. But it's going to be something. And and like I said, I just want us to give him more time. I don't care if he wins 4 games. If he wins more than 2, I'm happy. That's it. That's the basis of it. Like I said, my cap is 5. I think 5 wins is good. If we end up with 7, great. I undershot it. I undersold my own team. That's okay. But I'm not going to be one of those people that's like, man, we're going to win 11 games now that we have Dave Canales. It's like,
no.
Man, I'm sorry. He was a coordinator for 1 year with a team that had Baker Mayfield, that had Mike Evans, that had Chris Godwin on just the offensive side, Rashad White, and of course everybody on the offensive line. And then you go to the defensive side and you're like, yeah, they had people. Not like he was, trying to revitalize these Panthers. But I do want to ask you one thing. I'm not sure if you've noticed it, but I certainly have, that most of the people that the Carolina Panthers have hired for this coaching staff, offensive and defensive, are all involved in faith-based things. Obviously, I'm not going to get into the whole religion thing, but do you think that will benefit? Because from what I've heard, and from what Bryce has said, he's a very faithful guy, very into his faith with Christianity and everything like that. Brad and a bunch of other people have done stuff. In fact, if you check out my series, I did a short video on Brad Idzek where he interviewed with an organization that did that. But do you think that helps? I mean, it's Carolina. Carolina already has deep church roots and everything like that. So I think that might help turn Carolina and get a little bit more of the community over there, because they're like, man, this is a quarterback that, follows the word and all that other stuff. So what's your thoughts?
Oh, to answer your first question, I honestly haven't noticed that. I know like McCandless, he's like very faith-based.
Very.
He had the book and everything about his infidelities and his struggles.
I thought that was crazy, by the way.
Yeah, I like it, personally. It just shows that he can step up and take accountability for, screwing up. So, but I don't know. I didn't feel comfortable like reading it and just like kind of like digging into,
yeah, I haven't read his book.
Life.
I haven't read his book, and I've only listened to the few interviews that he's done where he's like talks about it briefly, because there's so much more to that I'm just like, man, that you're an adult, you're a head coach, you have your own personal life. I'm not going to meddle in that stuff. Come on.
No, but I honestly haven't noticed that, and I mean, I've got mixed feelings about it. On one hand, like I do think it's great to have a organization that has good values, especially if that's going to seep into the community.
Of course.
I do think that's great, but if all of this is just to like make Bryce feel uncomfortable, then like I'm kind of like, dude, like,
okay,
take the training wheels off and like man the heck up, like
you can curse. Like, it's fine. I don't care.
Okay, yeah, just like man the fuck up, like don't bring in like all these people that are faith based just because your quarterback is like, no, like I'm tired. Like there's part of me that's tired of the choir boy act, Matt Rule with his youth pastor, like
yes,
his youth pastor gimmick that he was doing, like and then Frank Reich coming in with his milquetoast suburban dad, like no, like I want football coaches. I want somebody that's going to break a shoe off in somebody's ass for like messing up, because like we messed up a lot. Like we need to, if he's gonna come in there and preach accountability, like great, we need to hold everybody accountable in the building. But if we're doing that just to like coddle Bryce and make him feel comfortable and like he's accepted no, I don't believe in that at all.
I agree.
Like, I mean, it's great that you're trying to build the best possible organization for your hopeful franchise quarterback, but at the end of the day, like he's got to be held accountable just like the other 52 guys on the roster. At the end of the day, like he flashed signs of greatness as much as he could, but he also had his fair share of screw ups.
Yeah,
and I think he should be held accountable for it, just like everybody else be held accountable for their screw ups. So if we're doing this to coddle him, I don't like it at all. But if we're doing it to kind of, do a reset of the organization and kind of, maybe be more active in the community, then, great. I think, you got to tap into that, especially having the rookie year that he had, and going into year 2 with everything that's surrounding it. But I mean, and I think it does help that his father is like a psychiatrist, I believe. So I mean, that could be that could be a huge benefit for him. But I mean, do we need to surround him with an entire organization of
yes men?
Not really yes men, but sure, like-minded individuals. Like, is like what are we doing here? But and as far as EJ goes, I don't really have any too much worry as far as the defense goes, as long as we get able-bodied defenders in the building, guys that can play at a pretty good level. He's not going to sabotage his chances at potentially being a head coach in the league just because he doesn't want to be in Carolina necessarily. He's still going to coach the heck out of that unit as best as he can. And, hopefully we still field a defense that, can keep us in ball games while having an offense that can take over and win those ball games.
I agree.
So, it's one of those things. So I'm not, like I said, as long as we get, worthy players in those starting roles, we should be fine as a defense. I do think the numbers were a bit inflated as far as like pass defense goes because teams just weren't passing the ball on us after a certain point because they didn't have to. So I think those numbers were a little bit inflated, but I mean, hey, it's it is what it is. Offensively, I think offensively, McCandless does have a good track record of smaller quarterbacks.
Oh yeah,
of working with smaller quarterbacks. I mean, the biggest quarterback, on his track record is Geno Smith, and even Geno Smith isn't like this huge, like hulking, like like Frank Reich. We were saying Frank Reich is used to the Carson Wentz's and the Nick Foles and all
Matt
those
Ryans.
6'5", 6'6", 230. Just big guys. Dave Canales is kind of like the opposite, where you get Russell Wilson, who's 5'10", Geno Smith, who's like 6'2", and then Baker Mayfield, who's 6 foot even. And now he's going to Bryce Young, who's also 5'10". So I think he definitely knows, how to work with those guys a little bit better than Frank Reich might have. So I think that's a benefit for Bryce. I definitely think I'm not even gonna lie and say Dave Canales was on my radar going into the offseason. He wasn't, but I've always been a Ben Johnson guy. I was a Ben Johnson guy ever since we fired Rule. So it's just that's who I thought it was going to be. And then Bobby Slowick, definitely he caught my interest based on what he was doing with Stroud in Houston. Eric Bieniemy is always a guy that if he was a guy that we're going to bring in, I was always going to welcome it. But it just doesn't seem like
anybody wants him. Yeah. It blows my mind that you don't want a multi-time Super Bowl winning OC, but whatever.
I think it goes back to his past, and those off the field things that he was involved in. I think a lot of teams just don't want that media headache. But I mean, I think he's a great coach. And I definitely think he would be that kind of strong man that we needed to come in and just like, set guys straight.
Who do you think gets a head coaching job first, Wilks or Bieniemy?
Oh man,
because Wilks, the thing that we're going to jump to after this, just so you know, is going to be the Super Bowl. I'm going to ask you your thoughts.
All right.
So we're about to jump to that one. So Wilks got fired and all that other stuff. Do you think Wilks is going to get the opportunity down the road, or Eric first?
No, I don't think. I mean, if you had to make me choose, I would probably say Eric Bieniemy would get the chance, just because I think Wilks, he's got the lawsuit thing going on. I really think he's going to get blackballed now.
You think so?
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I mean, it just smells like it, like on the wall, like like if he didn't, like, because the narrative around him is going to be, oh, well, he couldn't make it work in San Francisco. Where else is he going to make it? Well, wow, that's a great defense. They've got all pros everywhere. Yeah. And like, I think there's like a lot of stuff that went on there that, well, you said, we'll touch on that. But I think, that's not really fair to him that narrative is going to follow him now. And then you have the lawsuit. And I think, that's not really going to do him any favors.
Yeah.
So I just think, I think it's going to be a very, tough battle going forward for him getting a head coaching job. Eric Bieniemy, it's going to be a tough battle for him as well, because I mean, he took a risk by taking that Washington job. And
the rumors that they're saying he might be headed back to Kansas City. And I'm like, man, if he goes back to Kansas City and wins some more, it's going to be a real interesting year for him.
Yeah. But I could see a situation where he finally breaks through. For Wilkes though, I think it'll be tougher. And sorry for that. Just now, somebody
Damn.
called me. I had to
No,
send
no.
him a voicemail.
No,
So
no, you're good, buddy. But hey, since we're already talking about Wilkes, we'll jump to the Super Bowl. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs beat the 49ers the minute I put down $100 bet for the Niners to win. But obviously, Wilkes gets fired after that game. We've got some thoughts on that. I do agree with you. I think he will get blackballed. It's one of the unfortunate things. I think Eric Bieniemy has gotten a pseudo, I'll call it gray ball so far, where
yeah,
he's just not getting that next opportunity. Obviously, with Adam Peters going to the Commanders, I was like, ooh, he might be like, yeah, we need to just take Eric Bieniemy and just promote him and just be done with this. Like, we're done.
mm-hmm.
We don't need to go find anybody. And then to see them go in a different direction, I thought was really dumb because Dan Quinn is not going to be the guy. And I think just as we move forwards, I think another reason why Wilkes gets blackballed is unfortunately he's a defensive coordinator. And I think that's just, we're moving to the things where the Bobby Slowicks, the Ben Johnsons, Cliff Kingsbury's coming back. Like, all of those are happening now, and the offensive guys are getting their second, third, fourth retread as opposed to defensive guys. I mean, we literally had Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick not even get jobs. I'm sorry. If I'm David Tepper, I make the call at least to Bill Belichick and be like, do you want the job? And if he says no, I go, okay, cool. Goodbye. Next.
Yeah.
I make him tell me no. Because if I have to do something, I'll still make Dan Morgan the GM and bring him in and be like, you guys can just work together to figure this out. But I mean, if he does, if it is any part of those championships with Bill Belichick, bring it to Carolina. But we don't see that anymore. But let's just jump back to Wilkes. I know, jumping off topic. What's your thoughts on just the Super Bowl and obviously moving forwards? What is Wilkes going to do with no job?
Oh, I think. Immediate thoughts are: I don't think that him being fired was strictly performance based.
I agree.
I think there were definitely some things behind the scenes that may not have worked well with, what they were doing. But I mean, the numbers don't lie, essentially. I mean, they still fielded one of the best defenses in the league. I just think that, Kyle Shanahan wanted the defense ran a certain way, and that just doesn't really fit with what Steve Wilkes is a very aggressive defensive coordinator. He likes to send pressure.
Yep.
He likes to that's his thing. He sends pressure. And
he's got the guys to do it. He had the guys to do it in the Niners. Like, go get him.
I just don't think Kyle wants that kind of defense. I think he wants a safe defense that's really good still, that just, doesn't get too ahead of themselves, just, keeps the game in check, and then his offense takes him home.
But the problem is that isn't what happened. His offense went 3 straight 3-and-outs or 4 straight 3-and-outs. You had Purdy healthy the entire game. You stopped feeding Christian McCaffrey after the half. What? He didn't want to win that game, it felt like, because it got to the point where I was like, is the Niners defense just bad? Like, all of a sudden, second half, Patrick Mahomes just has their numbers, able to go out there and just dot them up, and the game's pretty much over. And then as soon as that final drive happened, I was like, God damn it, here we go. I was like, oh. And then I literally remember seeing them pan to Steve Wilkes, and I was like, well, it's been a long, short visit, whatever you want to call it. It's bye.
It's been real.
Yeah, he was absolutely going to get the scapegoating from that. Because if not, you have to acknowledge the 23-8 loss where Shanahan should have ran the ball, this loss where he should have ran the ball. I think that's just his problem. And now the rumors that he might go out and try and get a quarterback to actually do something a little bit more. Obviously, the big one is Kirk Cousins. He's always wanted Kirk. I don't think that's going to be a reality. It would be super cool, don't get me wrong, because I think that Kirk Cousins was an MVP at 37 or whatever the hell age he is. So yeah, Wilkes got this shit into the stick, man. Kirk's young. I thought he was like 36.
Nah, dude. I think Kirk's only like 33, 34.
Oh, if
he
that's
came
the
in
case.
the same league as same year as RG3.
35. So yeah, he's not bad.
Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say I know he's not 37.
That's crazy.
But yeah, no, Kirk's still like, and I like Kirk Cousins. I do. He's one of he's one of those quarterbacks that like doesn't get enough love because he doesn't really do anything like flashy. Like, he's not he's not the big strong arm. He doesn't, wow you with his legs, but like, when you put some weapons around him, and he'll make that shit work.
Yeah, you give him Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Debo Samuel. Oh, it's a wrap.
Yeah, he's gonna feast. But no, yeah, I think I don't know. Like, and that whole playoff run for San Francisco, it just felt underwhelming to me because, all right, they played Green Bay. Green Bay's whooping them, and it looks
so
and then
bad.
And then Jordan Love makes some boneheaded throws, and they just survived Green Bay.
Yeah.
Then they get to Detroit, and Detroit is beating the brakes off of them. And then you say whatever happened with Detroit, like, oh, Dan Campbell's aggressiveness. I don't really think that's necessarily the case.
They're only mad at his aggressiveness when he doesn't win, but when he does 4th and 1 and gets it, and you guys are all freaking out, everybody's happy. So
yeah, you live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Yeah.
It's how it works. But they squeak by Detroit, and it just felt like, man, like this team that, like, everybody that they're the number 1 seed, it just feels like they're just getting by. And I was critical of the amount of times that Brock Purdy threw in that game, the Super Bowl. And I understood it the first 2 games because they were playing from behind a lot, but they got up 10-0 in the Super Bowl. If that was the game to rely on your ground game,
that was the moment.
That was it. You salted away. If you don't feel comfortable giving McCaffrey 30+ carries, all right, you still got Elijah Mitchell, who's still very capable himself. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you want to make Brock Purdy seem like he's a not a game manager or he's a game changer or whatever. Like, who cares? Get the Super Bowl.
Yeah, win the Super Bowl. That's all. You literally got to win one more game, and
and it's just like McCaffrey had 16 carries in regulation. Like,
he'd had 30.
30. And this is a team that ran the ball more than they threw the ball in the regular season. Like, they had more rushing attempts than they did passing attempts all year. And now you get to the biggest game of the year. This is your optimal conditions. You're up. Just salt the game away, and you didn't do it. And then people say, oh, well, there were penalties and they got behind the sticks. And it's just like, okay.
There was some, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, there were some. But
some of those were the 49ers' fault, though.
Yeah. And just, I don't know, man. I don't know. Shanahan's been on fraud watch, for a little bit, as far as I'm concerned. I think he's a very good coordinator, and I think he's a great, offensive mind as far as like schematics go, and putting players in positions, to win. But I mean, what was the reason why they moved on from Jimmy G and they traded up to get Trey Lance?
I'll never understand that. I didn't even like Trey Lance coming out of college, to be honest with you. It totally flabbergasted me, just like the Jets going and getting Zach Wilson. It was like, what on tape did you see that you were like, this is worth all that I'm about to give up?
Well, I liked Trey Lance a little bit. Like, I liked him, but the thing is, like, you trade up to get a quarterback like that because you see his physical tools. He's 6'4", 230, very strong arm, very athletic. Okay, let's see what you can make of him. Because you already have Jimmy G, who's like, you saw him in the Super Bowl. He didn't really, he didn't make the throw that he needed to win you the game at the end of the day. So you got to get you a guy that has that arm talent to make those differences, to keep you in a game with Patrick Mahomes, that can go head to head with Patrick Mahomes.
I agree.
That's essentially what it's about at the end of the day, is whether you're in the AFC or the NFC, you need a guy that you can say, okay, this guy can go head to head with 15 in red. At the end, that's what it's all about. It's his league. Everybody else is just playing in it. So
I agree.
You get Trey Lance. All right. We might not have been the highest on him, but he's a big, strong guy. He's got the tools. You don't even try and develop him. You throw him, he had to play early his rookie year, and because Jimmy G got hurt, he didn't look great. But I mean, once again, you saw the physical tools that he had.
And then playing in the cold. He played in North Dakota. Like, you know that if you got to go to Buffalo to win, he can go to Buffalo and win.
Yeah, so it's like you try you gotta you I think they moved on from him too soon. I think you gotta like give him the chance to show that he's developing in the offense because he only played 2 games or 1.5 games last year before he
Traded him
broke
to
his ankle,
Dallas, right?
or he broke his ankle, and then they traded him this offseason. But
This offseason.
but yeah, so he broke his ankle, and he just kind of gave up on him. Like once Brock Purdy got the wheels, and it's like, okay, I mean, do you think Brock Purdy is that much better than Jimmy Garoppolo that he can go head to head with Patrick Mahomes?
I think that the reason why he's with Brock Purdy now, and the reason why they moved away from Trey Lance, is because Kyle wants this. He wants a guy that can win the game up here. He wants Tom Brady essentially, because that's what Tom's thing was. He didn't have the biggest
Yeah.
arm, wasn't the fastest. He was the smartest. I think that's really what he was looking for. Purdy has the starts in college at Iowa State, or Iowa State.
Iowa State.
So, I mean, he's got the ability, and obviously he can make the decisions. Like he's got the computer that we were sold on with Bryce, which is why I always say if he ever got Bryce, man, it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's where it is. I think that was the moment where he stepped out of his comfort zone to go for physical traits as opposed to mental traits. Like he wants Kirk Cousins, not because he's fast, not because he's strong or anything like that. He wants him because he can like think about what's happening, adjust to the defense, and deliver the ball. That's all he needs him to do. I don't need you to do anything crazy. You don't have to be, a former 49er in Kaepernick in order to go to a Super Bowl. You just need to be able to deliver the ball and execute my offense. But I agree with you that he's on fraud watch. In fact, my tinfoil hat theory for the Panthers is if it goes bad with Bryce in the next year or two, especially with McCandless, that we fire McCandless. Hopefully it's about the same time that the Niners fire Shanahan, and then we take Shanahan. And then hopefully, he could break that curse. But if he's truly cursed, I'd keep him far away from Carolina.
I mean, maybe it could happen. I mean, it all depends on how it ends in San Francisco.
And
Because,
how long
he's
they're
on
willing to
contract
wait.
through next year. 2025 is when his contract ends.
Yep.
And I just think that I was getting into it. Not really getting into it, but I had a little back and forth with our good friend Tim Bailey.
Yep. Shout out Tim.
He didn't seem to understand like why you would get rid of Kyle Shanahan. Even if they don't win a Super Bowl with the core they have, and I'm like, that's a fireable offense in my opinion. Like if you don't get one ring with McCaffrey, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle,
Trent Williams.
Armstead, Bosa, Trent Williams, Fred Warner. Like I've just named 8 players right there that are like some of the best at their positions, if not the best at their positions. And if you can't get a ring with that, as this offensive genius head coach, then like
an embarrassment of riches, man. Embarrassment.
Like, where are you going to win at? Like it's like the same. Like it's the same argument that's probably going to get used against Steve Wilkes. Like you couldn't be a good defensive coordinator in San Francisco. Well, what are you going to do here? And like, well, you're Kyle Shanahan. If you couldn't win a Super Bowl with that offense and that defense and the defensive coordinators that have turned head coach that have come through your building, and the offensive coordinators that have turned into head coaches that have come through your building, what are you?
Yeah.
What are you? Like,
you're the best. You're the most winning regular season coach. Congratulations.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's not what you want, regardless. How long do you think, like if they go back next year and they go to the Super Bowl and they lose, do you think that that's enough to fire him? Or do you go, man, he made it to another Super Bowl. We're so close. We need one more year. Like, is it going to be the moment where it's like the Bills where they go 4 Super Bowls in a row and lose 4 in a row kind of thing before they're finally like, dude, just go somewhere else. I don't care where it is. Just don't stay here.
Well, I don't know if it'll be as much a firing as it will be they just don't extend his contract because, next year is the end. 2025, that's when his contract ends. If they have if they have another run where they get to the Super Bowl, they come up short, and it's like, what do you do? Like, do you extend him and hope that you eventually get over the hump? And if they did that, I would totally understand it because good head coaches just don't fall from trees. If you got one, you gotta try and keep them there as much as
Yeah.
possible, because it's not like college where these guys can just like, go take another job. There's not 120 of them out there.
Yeah.
So it's just like, all right, but you also got to say, all right, this guy, at some point they're not going to be able to retain everybody. So like, this is it for them.
Yeah, I agree with you. And if you do retain him in the future, if you decide you want to move on from him, coaches are tradable. It's normally like a second round pick or something like that. Somebody will give you something for him. He's Kyle Shanahan. Yeah. He's got a good system. Most people use his system now in the offense, besides a few people. So it's going to be a real interesting thing. But I am going to have to end us there, bud. I appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna let you, tell everybody about what you do on Twitter and everything like that. Hopefully, send a bunch of subscribers your way, and then we'll just get on out of here.
Twitter at stop_n, the letter N _look. Like I said, I'm just mostly on Twitter to talk about football, MMA, basketball, boxing. Those are the main things I talk about. So if you're
okay, I'm gonna have to bring you back on then for MMA and boxing, because I just added roll coverage, just added cricket and handball. So I've been doing some videos about that, and of course the NFL, basketball, hockey, the whole nine. But I haven't really touched boxing or MMA at all. I've obviously seen a bit of MMA, MMA. Sorry, my wife is watching anime in the other room. But yeah, I would love to bring you on, man. Talk some boxing and all that other stuff. You can teach me a lot about it, because I don't know jack shit other than hit the dude in front of you.
Well, I could definitely do that. I personally think my boxing knowledge is more than my football knowledge. MMA, there's a lot of stuff about MMA. I've still kind of learned about that. But yeah, definitely I'd be down. Like I said, check me out on Twitter. I'm always responding to people. Anybody that wants to just chop it up about sports, life. I'm always open. And once again, thanks for having me, Nick.
Of course, man. I appreciate you coming on, Zach. I'm of course going to bring you back. This has been Roll Coverage. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of the day. Peace.